Say guten Morgen, guten Tag. So welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, to be talking to you. So if you followed the presentation of Fishmaster of Mr. Lenry, so we managed our brood stock. We know how many females and males we have. We made them being fertile. We made the fish to hatch, so we know how many larvae we have. And we are now entering probably the most crucial stage in fish farming, which is the hatchery or the larval or the juvenile stage. Because without those juveniles in good numbers and good quality, there won't be any grow-out fish to be sold. And this is actually the fact, if you have a hatchery stage that is successful, this is the basis of each fish species to be successful in aquaculture. If you don't have that, you won't have an aquaculture business with this species. All right, let's go. I have divided my presentation into two parts. The first one is I want to give you some insights into some basics, why this stage is so important and what feeds you will encounter in your hatchery in this crucial stage. And the second part will be more applied to the different steps you will encounter in the hatchery. So I always make this comparison of fish larvae compared to a human baby. Fish larvae actually have a tremendous potential for growth, that they really want to eat, they really want to grow. And in fact, they are the fastest growing vertebrates on Earth. So that accounts not only for African catfish, but for many different fish species. And if you compare that growth to a growth of a human baby, which is probably born at 3 kilograms, and after 6 weeks it has almost, probably 4 kilograms. But if you transfer the growth that a fish larvae can experience in the same period after hatching and transfer that to a human baby, you would end up with a baby of almost 400 kilograms. Just as a comparison. So that is the size of a cow. So they have a tremendous potential for growth. And this is a bit contradictory to what they actually are. So they are very underdeveloped. So these are pictures of newly hatched African catfish. So they barely look like fish at all. So they can barely swim, they can barely see, they can barely feed. So they have to learn how to feed, in fact. All their organs and all their hormones and enzymes have to be developed. So they are very underdeveloped at that stage, and this is very contradictory to their actual growth potential. Some critical steps if you want to be successful in larvae culture is to have optimal offspring, like we heard from Fishmaster's presentation. If you don't have this optimal offspring, then those fish will not fulfill their growth potential. Second point is having optimal environmental conditions. So have your water parameters and your conditions right, and this is especially crucial because any large fluctuations or deviations from the optimum will cause immediate trouble and cause immediate mortality. So this is especially crucial in this stage. Third point is having skilled staff. So if you don't do the hatchery operations on your own, you need to have people that have the knowledge, that accommodate the knowledge, that have their daily business with the fish so they know what they are doing. Strict hygiene. This is a point, this is often overlooked in many hatcheries. So these small fish, these baby fish are very prone to any diseases. So if you don't have your hygiene right, then these fish will be infected immediately with diseases. So separate your equipment. If you have different sections in your hatchery, for example, don't shift one equipment from one section to the other. Have, if possible, different equipment for different sections. And last but not least, and this will be the major point today, is having the optimal nutrition at the right time. First of all, a topic I just want to scratch is microalgae, a topic that is not so important for African catfish, but it is for many other fish species. So fish larvae, when they hatch and they start to ingest and gulp water, they also ingest microalgae that are in the water. And they have to be proven for many fish species to be advantageous because they trigger the digestive system. So this has been quite crucial for many fish species. But I just want to stretch this topic here. Second point is zooplankton called rotifers. So this is a part of a zooplankton community that you also find in a lake or a pond or a water body. You can catch your zooplankton from a water body if you like, and give them to your baby fish. But there are two downsides if you do that. So first of all, you don't know how much you will catch. So is that enough to feed your baby fish, the amount of baby fish you have? And do you have the right composition? There can also be predatory zooplankton, for example, and they will start feeding on your fish larvae, in fact. So you don't want to have that in your fish tank. But you can actually culture those organisms. So you can separate them, select them, and then culture them. They will multiply very fast, and then you have ready food for your fish larvae. They are also very nice. They cruise, as you can see, they cruise in the water. This is under a microscope here. They cruise in the water, and they're actually very good prey organisms for the fish larvae. But it is very time consuming. You also need extra tanks for that. You need to feed those zooplankton, and it's it happens very often that these cultures crash right at the time when you have fish larvae ready, and then you don't have anything to give to them. So it is possible, but it is also very difficult. Second point is, probably many people of you know, is Artemia, which is actually a shrimp, a very small shrimp. It can be harvested, so it's very convenient. You see also that these are floating and swimming freely in the water body, so they're actually very good prey items. They have the perfect size for many fish larvae. They are attractive because they are flapping with their arms or wings. So very good, and they are also very convenient to use because you can buy the eggs or the shells in a can, just hatch them and then give them to your baby fish. One major downside is that they can carry diseases with them. So you can actually, by using Artemia of low quality, you can actually introduce bacterial diseases into your system, to your fish larvae, and this is what you don't want to have. So these two organisms, you see another picture, this Artemia. This is not African catfish, another species, but you see that they have the perfect size to feed to the fish. And actually the discovery of these rotifers and Artemia have been a major advancement in raising a lot of fish species in the last decades. So to those of you who are not familiar how to hatch, just in a nutshell, it's actually very simple to hatch Artemia. You just can use almost any container. You can use a plastic bottle, turn it upside down, cut the bottom, and then you only need a little bit of light, a little bit of salt, because they hatch only in salt water. You need some air, some bubbling to keep it in suspension, and then a water outflow where you can harvest the Artemia. So you buy the eggs. You see they use a water container here, turned upside down. So there are many self-made setups in this respect. You see the light here, that there's a heater inside here. Then you harvest the Artemia and then sieve them and give them to the fish. A crucial step here is that you don't use eggs when you harvest these. They are unhatched eggs and also the hatched egg shells, and you don't want to give that to your baby fish because they will swallow it and they get stuck in the gut. What's also very nice is because of the orange color of Artemia, you actually see from the side if you have the possibility if they have eaten, so you can very nicely control the feeding success. Coming to the next point, and this includes the products that we are selling, the dry feed. There are a lot of different feeding systems that you can use to feed it automatically to your fish. You can spend a lot of money on it, and there are also very simple systems which you can use, but the downside of these systems is that you cannot really control the feeding of your fish. So the best feeding system is actually by hand. So only when you feed by hand several times a day, you can control, you get to know your fish, you see how your fish are behaving, you can check if the fish have eaten, if they have eaten enough. So that actually enables you to learn your fish, to read your fish actually better. So feeding by hand is very crucial, no matter what feeding system you might have. What is crucial when you use these dry feeds? Having the right feed at the right time. I will come back later to that. Slowly introduce the dry feed, so don't just start with a full amount from one day to another. Slowly introduce the feed when you're still using Artemia, so that the fish get used to it. It's a different particle. You need to train your fish to feed on those particles. So slowly introduce it and then increase day by day. Regularly check if the fish have eaten, so it can be done with any beaker or a plastic bottle that you cut the top of. You just scoop a little bit of larvae out of your tank, you hold it against the light, and then you can see if they have feed in their gut. What is very crucial is that you give enough feed to your fish, but not too much, but not too little. If you underfeed them, they will not fulfill their whole growth potential, but if you overfeed, you will actually deteriorate the water quality in your fish tank. But since not every particle that you throw into the water will be eaten, because it is slowly sinking through the water body, you can expect some kind of feed waste that you need to remove from your fish tank. Secure constant supply of this feed, and we advise to give the feed in meals, so maybe every 2 hours, as often as you can per day, but don't give it to them continuously, because they are really eating, and all this feedback in their system telling them that they are full, that they need to stop, they don't have that at that stage. So we're just ingesting, and we'll just poop out all the feed undigested, and this is not very efficient. So feed them every 2 hours, maybe for 10-20 minutes, then give them the time to digest the feed, and then you start after 2 hours again. And this has also a good side effect, because this will also increase the water quality. If you allow your fish tank a little bit of break, then also the water quality will improve again. Remove uneaten feed from the tanks, sometimes several times a day. So I've been working in the hatchery, and this actually took most of my time of the day, cleaning the dry feed from the tank and cleaning possibly also dead fish. And as hatchery conditions are very different, so every hatchery system can look differently, different tank sizes, different tank shapes. So each feeding protocol has to be adapted to the actual conditions, and the technical team of Aqua will help you with that. As this said, having the right feed at the right time, this of course includes the size. If you're feeding too large size, the fish will not be attracted to it, and they will not be able to eat it. So having the right feed size at the right time is actually crucial. And there's actually an advantage of using Aqua fry feeds and granulates, because as Mr. Lenry said, there is a natural overlap in the feeds. So you see these granulate particles here, they are not all the same size. So we have, in each feed, we have a distribution of different particle sizes. For example, in the Alla Futura 0.5 to 0.1, you will have the majority of particles in the middle. So 0.7, 0.8. You will have a few particles at 0.5 and a few particles at 1.0. So you have a natural distribution of particles. When you then follow with the next size of Alla Futura, which is the 0.9 to 1.6, you also have here the majority at around about 1.2, 1.3, a few particles 0.9, a few particles 1.6. So they actually overlap. So you have a natural overlap, which enables the fish to get the right particles that they need, compared to pellets, which serve their purpose, but they are very uniform in size, so you don't have this wide distribution, and if the fish are not big enough, they will not be able to follow up. This said, I will come to the last point of my presentation, the hatchery protocols, and here I have compiled several steps that are crucial during your hatchery processes. Just want to follow up of what Fishmaster said. You need to sex your fish, you need to know what sex they have. Here again on the left side, just a short repetition. On the left side you have a female, on the right side you have a male, so you need to know the sex of your fish. Second one is to initiate fertilization. So you can buy artificial hormones, synthetic hormones if you like, but you can also take these hormones from other fish by dissecting out the so-called pituitary, which contains these hormones. It looks difficult, it looks challenging, but it can be done with some practice. Then you dry it, then you crush it with a mortar, you suck it up on a syringe, and then inject it into the fish, and then a few hours later you will have the ripe eggs given from the female. So it looks complicated, but it can be done with a little bit of practice. Second one is the assessment of eggs and larvae. So you want to know how many you have, potentially also what quality they have. So you provide these hatching trays, which you submerge in the water of your tank. So you have an equal layer of eggs. So only one egg layer, so not eggs on top of each other, because then they will suffocate underneath. Then you can assess the quality. Here you see the mesh. This has actually the perfect mesh size of 1 millimeter, so it has the perfect size that the eggs can attach to it. And when the larvae hatch, they will go through the net down to the bottom of the fish tank. And if the hatching is completed, you can just remove this hatching tray and thereby also remove all these eggs. But you will also have unfertilized eggs, for example. These are the white ones here. And if you have too many of them, it might be better to actually discard the whole batch and start again. Then you check the quality of the hatchlings when they are in the tank, and also when they are then transferred to the feeding system. You can also check the quality just by scooping it out. You can take any device that you have, a glass beaker or a plastic beaker, anything that you have which you can hold against the light, and check your larvae. Some larvae of some species develop deformities of the spine, and if you have too many of them, you should also better discard this batch. The setup of those tanks is very, very different. So these hatching trays, they can stand on the bottom of the tank, but they can also be like floating frames, which you have the net and you have the eggs on top of it. So many setups are possible. And in fact, there are a lot of handmade setups you can find. And then when you transfer them to the tanks they're supposed to eat, there are also many setups. You can use glass aquaria, which are more expensive, but they have the advantage that you can observe the fish from the side and you can better see what is happening. And the usual tank setup is that you have a water inlet somewhere here, maybe, and this is the water outflow. And this here is a screen, so this has a small screen so that the fish cannot escape out of the tanks, but it will capture the dirt, and then you can turn this upside down out of the tank and remove and clean it. But there are many setups possible. This is an example of an outdoor tank where you simply have a mesh surrounded to the outlet flow. It serves the same purpose. Feeding behavior, we have the luxury that African catfish is a very eager feeder, so they really want to eat, so they're very aggressive. There's a short video from a colleague here. African catfish, I hope you can see it. You see the feed is distributed to the water. It floats initially, it spreads over the water surface, then it takes up the moisture from the water, and then it will start slowly to sink. But you can see as soon as the feed is given to the tank, to the surface, the fish immediately catch the smell. They catch it and want to feed on it. Another video, this is another species, but you can see as soon as these granulates enter the tank, the fish take it up very aggressively because of the attractants that we have put into the feed. As said, another critical point, tank cleaning. As said, this took most of my time when I worked in the hatchery. So as said, you will have some excess feed that you have in the tank. For example, you can see it here. It will accumulate somewhere in the tank, and you have to remove that by siphoning it out of the tank. This can be done automatically. There are very sophisticated systems, but usually it is done manually. So you don't have to scrub the tank all the time. It's like scrubbing a toilet. So keep your hands out of the tank as much as possible, but do the necessary work. Otherwise, the water quality will deteriorate. Tank cleaning, also the outlet, if necessary. So if it's clogged with dirt or whatever, dead fish, here you can see that has an advantage. You just turn it upside down so you can remove the screen and then replace it with a clean screen. Grading, very important, because the African catfish tends to grow apart. And if you don't do that on a regular basis, you see they are almost able to feed on fish of their own size. So they are very cannibalistic. So if you don't do grade in these early stages, you might end up with only one fish in your tank that has eaten all the others. So you have all kind of setups here. Again, this is a frame where you have a net, where you put the fish in. The smaller fish will go through the net. You have different mesh sizes, and then the larger fish will stay on top. You can later on use bar graders. They use the same purpose. Large fish stay on top, small fish get through, or later when the fish are larger, you sort by hand. So this is very crucial, in fact. Critical points. One critical point in the larval stage is this so-called weaning period or co-feeding. So when you start giving the dry feed and replace the live feed, the so-called weaning. So you need to check the feeding success if you are doing it right. You need to check the water quality, clean the tanks every day, as said, and feed in frequencies and periods. And one question that we get sometimes is, how many times should I feed my fish per day? Well, it depends how much time you can afford. So as said, every 2 hours is possible. And if you don't feed the fish for several hours, they will start starving. So you can compare it like to a human baby again. So a human baby will wake you up at night because it's hungry. But the fish don't do that, but they are hungry as well. So feed them as many times as possible during the day, and don't allow them to starve, because then they will not grow. Feeding guide, Artemia feeding here, very simple, with a spoon put into the tank. Here you can see again that the fish have eaten the Artemia from the orange belly. As said, when you feed dry feed, use manual feeding. You can use a spoon or whatever, just by hand. You can stop the water flow so that the feed doesn't flow out of the tank when you feed. You are distributing the feed in small amounts, maybe with a fingertip or a spoon over several places of the tank, that you encourage all fish to feed, not only the largest ones, because the larger ones will be faster, more aggressive, and they will take advantage of that. So be sure that you secure that all fish have eaten equally. And feed maybe for several minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, until you are secure that all fish have taken up their feed. And then, if possible, if needed, continue the water flow. The feed transition, again, here's a short picture. This is the water surface. You see the granulates floating initially, and then they will sink slowly through the water.